They say you should never meet your heroes. It'll either be awkward or they'll just let you down. But I say, bugger that. Hi, I'm Matt Stewart, and in this series, I'm going to be meeting some of my childhood idols, including musicians, comedians, and sports people. For this episode, I sat down with 7-time NBL MVP and absolute basketballing icon, Mr. Andrew Gaze. Gazy, g'day. How's it going?
I'm going really well. Unfortunately, not there with you, cooped up in this house of mine because of the issues that we're all facing. But it's good to catch up.
So stoked that you were up for doing this. It's actually quite surreal for me. I'm talking a TV version of you, but
Yes.
So I should be more comfortable. That's how I'm used to seeing you on the telly. So
Yeah, I pop up every now and again, try to be as casual as we can be, and never take it too seriously. So I don't think we're going to get into any sort of high stress activity as we chat here today.
no, probably not. So people, there'll be people watching this maybe around the world, and some of you might not be as familiar with you. I'd probably explain you as sort of Australia's Michael Jordan. Is that how you'd see it?
Well, he's probably the United States' Andrew Gaze, isn't that how it works?
I think that's probably actually more accurate.
The more accurate description.
I think that's how he introduces himself.
No, not at all. It's one that we've just seen the documentary, of course, The Last Dance. I don't know if you saw it, but
yeah,
it seems like most of the world did. It was a fantastic documentary, and to be even, albeit in Australia and the other side of the world, to be even mentioned in the same breath as the great man is an incredible honour. But no, we're not quite at that status, but certainly enjoyed the experience of watching Michael Jordan, and it was just fantastic to sit back and relive some of those moments, and also to be able to sit there and with my son, who wasn't born during that era when Michael was the greatest athlete on the planet, and just to talk him through it and explain some of the things that were going on. It was fantastic education for him as well.
Well, you played against him at the '92 Olympics.
Well, unfortunately, we were at the Olympics together, but we never got to play against them. They were in a different pool to us. So at the Olympics, there's 12 teams and there's 2 pools of 6. So you don't play everyone, and in the crossovers, we never got to match up against them. So it was unfortunate, but it was an incredible time. It was a time when basketball was really the most popular, or certainly getting the most attention of most of the sports in the Olympic Games. And to have those athletes come together as a basketball fan, let alone a competitor, it was incredible to sit back and see it and experience it.
You did play against the other dream team, though, the Lithuanian team?
Yes, that's right. And actually, there is a documentary about the other dream team. There's this little Lithuanian documentary about some of their histories and the challenges that they face. And Lithuania were really the nemesis of us throughout my time. We had a chance in 2000 to win a medal, and they beat us in the bronze medal game, and as they did in 96. So Lithuania have had our number over the journey. If you even go back further, back in Seoul, the Soviet Union, and what they've been able to do for many years, they were incredible. And we got a lot of joy out of playing against them, but unfortunately it was not a joy that came with success and winning. It was a joy through just having a chance to play against some of the great basketball athletes in the world. You
say you didn't have a lot of success, but you took the team, or Australia, to 4th spot 3 times in the Olympics. It's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, well, during those times, it was a pivotal moment. We were coming when our league was getting so much stronger here, and our players' experiences playing internationally, and we caught up relatively quickly. When you think back, say, 1972, or even prior to that in the 60s, we were a fair way off it. Although we were overachieving, we were regarded internationally throughout the 70s as the undersized overachievers because of the spirit in which we played. And then in the 80s, we started to make some inroads. In 1982, we finished the World Cup, and that was a landmark moment. And then we made the breakthrough in 1988 where we competed for a medal. And ever since then, on the back of also our women having great success, we've been regarded as one of the more dominant basketball nations in the world.
And you've ended up winning the Gaze Award seven times, the best Australian international player of the year. Is that so I mean, you deny that you're sort of Jordan level, but you're winning awards named after yourself. I don't know anyone else who does that.
No, well, I contributed a little bit to that award, but really it's an award for my dad and what my dad did. And he has been one of the pioneers of the sport, excuse me, and one of the guys that is responsible for the success of the sport. So he's had a lot of recognition. He's in the FIBA Hall of Fame. He's in the Naismith Hall of Fame. And I think that award is more named after him than it is me, but I'm happy to tag along and be a part of it.
Well, he's in a few Hall of Fames, but I think I read that you're in 3 or 4 Hall of Fames yourself. So it's not like you're talking yourself down, but you're the all-time point scoring record holder in the NBL, most ever assists, you're most free throws, most 3-pointers.
Yeah.
I don't know how you remain humble. You said you watched the Jordan documentary. He wasn't being humble. I think that's the big difference between you two. The other stat that I really like is his career scoring average, 30.1 points. Yours, 30.9.
Yes.
You aware of that stat?
Yeah. No, I wasn't aware of the specifics of it, but no, certainly. It's you look back at the statistics and some of the things that you mentioned, and not trying to be humble or deflected at all, but it also is a reflection of my longevity. I was fortunate enough to remain relatively injury free and was able to play for a really long time. But no, I understand my limitations and also understand that a lot of my success came through the systems that I played in and the opportunities that I was able to receive. And sometimes that's all it is. It's not to say that I'm any better than some of the other guys that have gone through that maybe don't have the same resume, but a lot of that's not because of their skill. It's just there is a bit of luck in it and being in the right place at the right time. And that is something that a good fortune smiled upon me more often than not.
Well, all right. That is almost over the top humility, Gazy.
No.
You're in the right place at the right time for 20 years, winning the MVP 15 years in a row or something like that.
No. Well, that's one I did have the good fortune to win. I think I actually won it 7 times. And one of the greatest honour that and tributes that is paid to me is that they've actually named the MVP after me. And it's a little humbling when you go up on stage the last few years at the NBL Awards dinner and have to hand over this little bronze statue of me dribbling the ball because I wasn't the most explosive player. So it was it is a little embarrassing, but it is nice and it's a great way to stay in touch and share the moments and the glory of other athletes coming through and having success.
You also just popped over to America for a couple of stints, including one time to win an NBA championship.
Yeah, I did. And again, and you talk about being in the right place at the right time. I had very, very little to do with that championship. I was on the team and got to share in that experience, but I played very little. But I had a role. I played my role to the absolute very best of my ability. And it's one of the messages that I try to spread when I'm asked to speak to groups and other teams is to say that it's when you're involved in a team sport, if you've got 12 athletes out there trying to be the main man and do the things their own way, it can inhibit the performances and outcomes aren't usually going to be what you're looking for. But if you get guys to buy in, sacrifice, sometimes you've got to swallow your pride and put your ego to the side a little bit. When you do that and you are able to have success, it's although you don't have the role that you would like, it's still incredibly rewarding, which when you look back at the history of my time with the Spurs in 1999, yeah, I've got a championship ring, but look up the most irrelevant NBA player to win a championship, and there'll be my smile and dial there very, very happily to share in it. But yeah, I really didn't have a major contribution to that championship win.
I think you brought your luck that you're talking about, that lifelong luck. Just being.
That's it.
Yeah, you've brought them over the line.
It's Australian luck. If you look back in history, whether it's Andrew Bogut, Paddy Mills, myself, we've brought Australians, Aaron Baines,
Luke Longley.
We've brought a lot of luck to NBA championship winning team. So it's every team should make sure that they get an Australian on their roster because we're that good luck charm that can bring about success.
I once won I played junior basketball, probably I'd say not quite to your sort of level. I played for the Bentley Hornets, and Bentley Hornets, yeah, you'd know that franchise, wouldn't you? Pretty important team.
I know Bentley, and I've heard of teams that have been called the Hornets before, but I'm not familiar with the Bentley Hornets. But I have no doubt that they're a quality organisation.
They were a pretty cool underground team. Maybe you haven't heard of them, but right. I won 2 championships with them in the under 12s or something. One of those, I did not get a lot of court time, admittedly, Andrew. The second time, they told me the wrong venue. And by the time we figured out the right venue, I walked in, the game was finishing. We were winning, so I got the medal. But I wasn't even in the stadium at the time. They said it was an accident. But I'm not so sure about that.
It's that is a setback, and it may have been a bit of a hint to suggest that perhaps the piano may have been a better opportunity for you. But hey, you were there, you tried your hardest, and perhaps a subtle way to say that perhaps you weren't necessarily going to bring about the glory that the under-12s were looking for.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. This show's sort of all about me catching up with my heroes of my youth, and really, you're still one of my heroes today. And I think obviously on the court, you're an all-time legend. The stats speak for themselves. But I think what makes you so cool is, unlike people like Jordan, you're like the most affable man in the world as well. Like I don't know many people who have such great skill sets in 2 different fields, but legendary basketballer, but you're so good on the TV. I think I've got this vague memory. I think about it all the time. Did you used to close out the Channel 10 sports reports by shooting a trick shot? You do like the footy tips and then you'd shoot it over your head?
Daisy's Guesses it was. Daisy's Guesses. And Portis was the sports, and he still is doing the sports. And then every Friday, for a couple of years, we'd go on there and I'd do some really stupid, quirky little things that to help promote it, and then we'd just give our tips. But yeah, they were great times. They were a lot of fun.
And you're a co-host of The Bounce, on Foxtel, a footy show. Did many seasons with one of my other childhood heroes, Danny Frawley, which you guys just seemed like you had the most fun. Yeah,
it was. It's a shame, Danny's tragic passing last year really knocked us about. But he had a really strong influence on me. He's another one. And all those guys, I was a Hawthorn fan growing up. To be able to sit along someone like Jason Dunstall, and more recent time, Cam Mooney. I was also there with Alistair Lynch, some of the absolute legends of the game. And to be, as a sports fan and a football fan, to be a part of that. But also to be around guys that I think we're like-minded in that we're prepared to laugh at ourselves. We understand that sport is really important, and you've got to be incredibly dedicated to have success at it. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more important things going on. But we try and keep it in perspective, laugh at ourselves, laugh at others, and have a bit of fun. And I learn a lot from guys like Danny, like you mentioned, that he was the king at laughing at himself and making sure that if you slipped up, he'd let you know and have a laugh at any of the people around his shortcomings as well, in a fun and respectful way, of course.
Totally. With the thought of heroes and whatnot, do you remember who some of your heroes were growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest hero I had was my dad, of course. He was the one that instilled in me the values of representing Australia, what the Olympics was about, the spirit of competition, the ideals of Olympism. All those things, because of his involvement, were instilled in me at a very early age. So to see him go off and compete, and as a player, and then of course as a coach, that had a profound impact on me. But also others along the journey. The obvious ones, like someone like Michael Jordan or Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Pistol Pete Maravich. Had a life-size picture of Pistol Pete Maravich up on my wall when I was growing up, alongside Dr. J, Larry Bird, Magic, and the Converse posters that we had there. And I can remember on my wall I had a picture of Bjorn Borg, and loved the way that he seemed to have this steely focus about how he wanted to play. And me being an emotional sort of guy, I tried to take inspiration from him, because sometimes as a youngster, and probably even when I got a little bit older, I let my emotions get the better of me. But I remember him and my dad sort of highlighting the way in which he was able to maintain that focus. So I had a lot of heroes growing up, and my mum is another one. My mum and the sacrifices she made to help me out, they're the ones that stick out the most.
Well, what was it like playing under your dad for so many years? It seems like, it's in another circumstance, it might be looked at as favourites, as the dad's boys, the star of the team. But I imagine if there was any ever doubt about that, you sort of shut up those critics by being the all-time greatest player in the world, better than Michael Jordan.
Well, that might be stretching it a little bit. I appreciate the error you've just made. What it is, for me, is I didn't know a lot of different, because I grew up, and from a very early age, my dad was either playing or coaching at the highest level. And naturally, when you're involved in team sport and your dad's the coach of the Australian team, even when I was younger, there were often times that I'd play in venues where their local star hadn't been selected in the Australian team, and some of their frustrations would be placed onto me because I was his son. And the cries of nepotism were always there. They weren't necessarily that loud. And I was really lucky in when I first got selected in the Australian team, my dad was the coach in 1984, Los Angeles Games. And for me, there were some cries of nepotism, but it's got nothing to do with your selection, but I had some objectively measurable things that you look at that you could point to justify my selection. In '84, I was the leading Australian scorer in the NBL competition. So there was these other things that people could look at to say, well, that makes sense. He's the leading Australian. Surely he'd be in the Australian team. Now, in reality, that is a statistical thing that you look at, but it's not the be-all and end-all for your ability to represent your country. But nevertheless, for those that perhaps didn't know the game, they could sort of see it, and that kind of helped in squashing or changing the perception of any sort of idea that there might have been some nepotism involved in my selection.
Yeah, I think, in the end, it would be hard to argue that you shouldn't have been in that team. I mean, you won the Gaze medal that many times.
I hadn't won it back then. It was still in the process of putting some things together to try and make that happen. But yeah, I absolutely consider it a privilege. And when it probably means more to me now than it did at the time, because at the time, like I said, I didn't know any different. He was always my dad. He was always around, and to me, it was just the norm. And you just learnt to live with how others would have opinions, and it didn't really bother me. But where I think it's kicked in more recently is now that I'm a dad. I'm a dad of 4 kids. I've got 3 girls and a son. And I can't tell you what I would give to be able to share in those experiences like I shared with my dad. Going away to the Olympics, competing and playing elite sports, and getting to have that type of relationship as a coach, as a father, and the joy that comes from sharing in those experiences. I look back on it now, and like I said, it's more meaningful now than it did at the time, because I understand the what it means to have those opportunities to spend time with your own kids and be able to share in each other's successes.
You followed in his footsteps into coaching at the top level as well in the NBL, and you turned the Sydney Kings into basically from a rabble into contenders in 3 short seasons, and then you've given it away.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I definitely haven't given it away, but yeah, it's. I think again, being trying to be objective about it, I think that the jury was out on the job that I was able to do. The reality of it is I inherited a team that was really struggling. They'd only won 5 games. I was there for 3 years, and our last season we went 18-10. At the end of the regular season, we had the equal. There was 3 teams on 18-10. Unfortunately, we lost in the first round of the playoffs, and we came up short. But I look at that team 3 years down the track to where they were 3 years earlier, and I'm actually very proud of the contribution I was able to make to the Sydney Kings. I feel still very much tied to the Sydney Kings because a lot of the players that I coached, or not a lot of them, there's a few of them that are still there, and they came very, very close this last season to winning the title. But yeah, it was fantastic. It was a great experience. I loved every minute of it. But unfortunately, my family weren't there with me. So it was 3 years with a lot of long time being away from the family. So it was one that, yeah, I decided that after that, now they were probably not going to continue on with me anyway, so I'm not trying to deflect or
There's that
hide
humility again. Gazy, come on.
No. I don't know what they were going to do, but certainly we absolutely mutually decided that I wanted to return home, and I left with great memories, great relationships with a lot of the players. Some of the relationships with the players not as great as others, but that's the nature of sport. But it was fantastic fun and loved it. And hopefully, one day in the future, maybe another opportunity will come about.
But maybe you're thinking probably in Melbourne is where you'd want to do it?
No, not necessarily. I'm still coaching in Melbourne now with in the youth league and still trying to help out because I love it. I love being involved, but it may actually be here in Australia. It might be overseas as my kids get to a point where they're off to university and they start to become more independent. Then it allows myself, my wife, to explore other opportunities that have been there. But if those opportunities don't come along, I live with no regret. I've been very, very blessed to have more than my fair share of opportunities.
Because you've played against, over a long career internationally in Australia, you played against all the greats. Who's the best player you ever played against, and who do you see as your career nemesis? Who was your great?
Yeah. There's clearly, to me, as a fan of the game and as a participant, Michael Jordan, in my opinion, is the greatest basketball player that's ever lived. And I think that the recent documentary of The Last Dance, although there's been a bit of a commentary about whether or not that it might have been a little bit skewed to a Michael Jordan a narrative, there's still, in my view, no disputing that he is the all-time great. And even in more recently, you see guys like LeBron James. It's mind-boggling the skills that these guys have. And even prior to that, you've got Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Julius Erving, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's one that sort of doesn't necessarily get spoken about in the conversation, but is still, in my view, right up there with them. So they've been all great. For me, the nemesis have been more either locally in our competition or internationally. It's been probably more the Europeans. A guy back in the early days, a guy like Drazen Petrovic, who played for Yugoslavia, was an unbelievable superstar. And similarly, Vlade Divac, who played for Yugoslavia, and then, of course, when they went on to play for Serbia. and then you've got the Soviets. They were always really, really tough. Sharunas Marshalinas, he was incredible. Avidas Sabonis, he robbed us in 90. Still have nightmares about us. Robbed us, big 7'1" guy. Hit a couple of threes in that game in 1996 that was gut wrenching. But probably the guy that I looked at and tried to compare myself against the most was a guy called Oscar Schmidt, who was from Brazil. Superstar scorer, 6'8", 6'9", could light it up from anywhere, and just had this no conscience attitude in regards to shooting the ball. He's a great fella, and got to know him over the years as well, and he's been another one that would fall into that category.
Maybe lastly, what's your career highlight? I mean, there's so many highlights across the career, but do any of them stand out to you?
Well, the thing that sticks out to me the most, and it not necessarily on the court, but is when I was named captain of the 2000 Sydney Olympic Games Australian team. And that's just not captain of the basketball team. I was captain of the Australian team. And part of the honour of that was being the flag bearer and introducing the greatest Olympians or Olympic athletes this country can produce to the rest of the world, and walking out in front of 120,000 fans at Stadium Australia in Sydney, out there at Homebush, and waving the Australian flag. That's pretty hard to top. And it was an incredible honour, extraordinarily grateful, and that sticks out the most.
I mean, to have it in the year in Australia, that's got to be higher than any other honour you could have, I guess. Amazing.
Again,
and you're still so humble. Gazy, come on.
Right place at the right time. There's only two of us that have done it, being captains, and you go back to 56 and then in Sydney. He's hoping that in my lifetime we get to share another Olympics in this great country, because we've done it so well the two times we've had it, and have had it. The Olympics in Melbourne and in Sydney are regarded as the friendly games for starters. It started off in 56 and helped ease some of the pain that goes on around the world. So he's hoping that we get to do it again sometime in my lifetime.
Thank you so much for joining us here, Gazy. For me, I think the conversation should be Jordan v LeBron v Gazy. That's, to me, where the conversation should be starting to move towards.
I don't think you're going to get much support for it, but I'm happy for you to champion the cause.
Thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thanks so much for tuning in. It was such an honour to have that chat. And if you want to see more of them, you can right here at Stupid Old Channel. They're available for your viewing pleasure. Why not also like and or subscribe? I'm not sure how that'll help you, and then if you hit that bell, it's another thing I've seen people say. Something like that anyway. So is this kind of all you wanted me to say?
Yeah, that's it.
Could we do another take?